Circumstantial ad hominem. A circumstantial ad hominem is a fallacy in which one attempts to attack a claim by asserting that the person making the claim is making it simply out of self-interest. This is because the person has a motivation to make the claim, whether it is true or not. However, the mere fact that the person has a motivation to make the claim does not make it false. Fallacy Composition. The fallacy of composition is committed when a conclusion is drawn about a whole based on the features of its constituents when, in fact, no justification provided for the inference. This line of reasoning is fallacious because the mere fact that individuals have certain characteristics does not, in itself, guarantee that the class, taken as a whole, has those characteristics. Sufficient justification must be provided to warrant the conclusion. Sodium and chloride are both dangerous to humans. Therefore, any combination of sodium and chloride will be dangerous to humans. Fallacy. Confusing cause and effect. Also known as questionable cause. This fallacy is committed when a person assumes that one event must cause another just because the events occur together. While causal reasoning can be difficult, many errors can be avoided with due care and careful testing procedures. This is due to the fact that the fallacy arises because the conclusion is drawn without due care. Fallacy Division. The fallacy of division is committed when a person infers that what is true of a whole must also be true of its constituents and justification for that inference is not provided. Bill lives in a large building, so his apartment must be large. Fallacy. False dilemma. Also known as black and white thinking. This line of reasoning is fallacious because if both claims could be false, then it cannot be inferred that one is true because the other is false. Fallacy. Gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is committed when a person assumes that a departure from what occurs on average or in the long term will be corrected in the short term. The form of the fallacy is as follows. There are two common ways this fallacy is committed. In both cases, a person is assuming that some result must be due simply because what has previously happened departs from what would be expected on average or over the long term. Fallacy. Genetic fallacy. A genetic fallacy is a line of reasoning in which a perceived defect in the origin of a claim or thing is taken to be evidence that discredits the claim or thing itself. It is also a line of reasoning in which the origin of a claim or thing is taken to be evidence for the claim or thing. I was brought up to believe in God, and my parents told me God exists, so he must. Fallacy. Guilt by association. Also known as bad company fallacy, company that you keep fallacy. Guilt by association is a fallacy in which a person rejects a claim simply because it is pointed out that people she dislikes accept the claim. The fallacy draws its power from the fact that people do not like to be associated with people they dislike. Of course, the fact that someone does not want to be associated with people she dislikes does not justify the rejection of any claim. Faulty comparison. Comparing one thing to another that is really not related, in order to make one thing look more or less desirable than it really is. Fallacy. Hasty generalization. Also known as fallacy of insufficient statistics, fallacy of insufficient sample, leaping to a conclusion, hasty induction. This fallacy is committed when a person draws a conclusion about a population based on a sample that is not large enough. Fallacy. Ignoring a common cause. Also known as questionable cause. This fallacy is committed when it is concluded that one thing causes another simply because they are regularly associated. More formally, this fallacy is committed when it is concluded that A is the cause of B simply because A and B are regularly connected. Fallacy. Middle ground. Also known as golden mean fallacy, fallacy of moderation. This fallacy is committed when it is assumed that the middle position between two extremes must be correct simply because it is the middle position. This line of reasoning is fallacious because it does not follow that a position is correct just because it lies in the middle of two extremes. Fallacy. Misleading vividness. Misleading vividness is a fallacy in which a very small number of particularly dramatic events are taken to outweigh a significant amount of statistical evidence. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because the mere fact that an event is particularly vivid or dramatic does not make the event more likely to occur, especially in the face of significant statistical evidence. For example, if a person survives a particularly awful plane crash, he might be inclined to believe that air travel is more dangerous than other forms of travel. After all, explosions and people dying around him will have a more significant impact on his mind than will the rather dull statistics that a person is more likely to be struck by lightning than killed in a plane crash. Fallacy. Personal attack. Also known as ad hominem abusive. A personal attack is committed when a person substitutes abusive remarks for evidence when attacking another person's claim or claims. This line of reasoning is fallacious because the attack is directed at the person making the claim and not the claim itself. The truth value of a claim is independent of the person making the claim. After all, no matter how repugnant an individual might be, he or she can still make true claims. Fallacy. Poisoning the well. This sort of reasoning involves trying to discredit what a person might later claim by presenting unfavorable information, be it true or false, about the person. Merely presenting unfavorable information about a person, even if it is true, hardly counts as evidence against the claims he/she might make. Fallacy. Post hoc. Also known as post hoc ergo propter hoc, false cause, questionable cause, confusing coincidental relationships with causes. This has been traditionally interpreted as after this, therefore because of this. However, it is evident in many cases that the mere fact that A occurs before B in no way indicates a causal relationship. Fallacy. Questionable cause. Description of questionable cause. This fallacy is committed when it is concluded that A is the cause of B simply because they are associated on a regular basis. The error being made is that a causal conclusion is being drawn from inadequate evidence. Fallacy. Red herring. Also known as smokescreen, wild goose chase. A red herring is a fallacy in which an irrelevant topic is presented in order to divert attention from the original issue. The basic idea is to win an argument by leading attention away from the argument and to another topic. Fallacy. Relativist fallacy. Also known as the Subjectivist fallacy. The relativist fallacy is committed when a person rejects a claim by asserting that the claim might be true for others but is not for him/her. Jill. Look at this, Bill. I read that people who do not get enough exercise tend to be unhealthy. Bill. That may be true for you, but it is not true for me. Fallacy. Slippery slope. Also known as the camel's nose. The slippery slope is a fallacy in which a person asserts that some event must inevitably follow from another without any argument for the inevitability of the event in question. Fallacy. Special pleading. Description of special pleading. Special pleading is a fallacy in which a person applies standards, principles, rules, etc. to others while taking herself, or those she has a special interest in, to be exempt, without providing adequate justification for the exemption. Fallacy. Spotlight. The spotlight fallacy is committed when a person uncritically assumes that all members or cases of a certain class or type are like those that receive the most attention or coverage in the media. For example, suppose a mass murderer from Old Town, Maine received a great deal of attention in the media. It would hardly follow that everyone from the town is a mass murderer. Fallacy. Straw man. Description of straw man. The straw man fallacy is committed when a person simply ignores a person's actual position and substitutes a distorted, exaggerated, or misrepresented version of that position. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because attacking a distorted version of a position simply does not constitute an attack on the position itself. One might as well expect an attack on a poor drawing of a person to hurt the person. Fallacy. Two wrongs make a right. Two wrongs make a right is a fallacy in which a person justifies an action against a person by asserting that the person would do the same thing to him/her. When the action is not necessary to prevent B from doing X to A. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because an action that is wrong even if another person would also do it. Faulty comparison. Also known as bad comparison, false comparison, inconsistent comparison. Form of description. Comparing one thing to another that is really not related, in order to make one thing look more or less desirable than it really is. Explanation. We are comparing a method of knowledge, science, to a system of belief, faith, which is not known for revising itself based on new evidence. Even when it does, the wrongs are blamed on human interpretation. Science is all about improving ideas to get closer to the truth, and, in some cases, completely throwing out theories that have been proven wrong. Furthermore, the claims of religion are virtually all unfalsifiable, thus cannot be proven wrong. Therefore, comparing religion and science on the basis of falsifiability is a faulty comparison. Exception, one can argue what exactly is really not related. Tip: comparisons of any kind almost always are flawed. Think carefully before you accept any kind of comparison as evidence.